A renowned expert. Expert? He's a specialist in cattle production, in genetics, in market analysis, in breeding, in management systems, in making cattle beef farming profitable. He's been working, helping keep it profitable. He's been working with the Charolais Society since 2002 on and off. He worked very closely with both David Benson and Murray over the years. Murray would work with him, David would just tell him what to do and ignore what he said back probably. So Gavin and I share two passions in life, and one is that we love cattle and the other is that Gavin and I both love rugby, and we both coached kids and we both found it enormously valuable as a personal experience to stop us going completely and utterly bonkers. But Gavin comes from bigger. If you were to think of Edinburgh, well, yeah, your way, Edinburgh and Glasgow, then an equilateral triangle bigger is down here somewhere, and it's in one of the most beautiful parts of the UK, in the Southern Uplands. I would recommend anyone who gets a chance to go and visit should do that. So, without further ado, we're going to have quite an open discussion here, so any toing and froing during please stick your hand up, tell them who you are, and ask any questions that you have. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Gavin Hill!
That's some introduction. Thanks very much for that. I think I don't need the microphone, I think I'm quite loud. If anybody thinks I'm talking too quickly, slow me down. But really, I want to take this opportunity to make sure you're aware. I got asked last night, are you a scientist? No. Are you a researcher? No. Because I do not want any facts to get in the way of a good story today, okay? So if you say, where's the science behind it? I'll be quick for you, there won't be much science behind it. What I want to do today is, I am not here to say, we're here to promote the Charolais. I'm here to talk about the Charolais' role in the marketplace in the UK. You okay with that? Yes. That's where the role is in the UK. Now you'll start seeing some nice pictures. That's because there's a lot of Scottish pictures of good cattle and that. As you go north, you'll start seeing cattle get better and better all the time. Okay? So that's what you're starting to see is some. Now, what I want to make sure you're aware of, when I talk about producers today, I'm talking about those that are like that with Charolais over maternal cows that produce calves. When I talk about the finishers, it's the finishers that take these calves. And when I talk about the processors, some of you will talk about packers. Okay? You talk about your meat packers, that's processors to us as well. So that's what we're going to try and talk about, where the role is in the marketplace, very much for them. Okay? So, we're going to look at the UK picture. Where are we with UK at the moment? So, most UK farmers, beef farmers at the moment, are probably making a fortune. Agree? No. We're not making a fortune. Probably the only people that are making a fortune at the moment in the UK, or sorry, not making a fortune, are doing quite well, is sheep farming is very strong at the moment, and dairy is very strong because the milk prices are going up. Beef is finding it hard. And then below beef, you've got pigs and poultry. Okay? So that's where we go. Now, I want you to be interactive today and try and pick up some of the pointers I'm trying to make to you. In the UK, more than half our cows are now only on 16% of our holdings. Okay? So what does that mean? They're getting bigger and bigger. So what will the normal commercial producer start to be starting to think about? How does that relate to the Charolais? Does it suit them or does it not? What's your thoughts? Yes, you're going to have to say yes. But it's going to be harder. Because as these boys increase their numbers by 400, 500, 600, 800 cows, 2,000 in some cases, they actually wanted to make it easier for themselves. And what I mean by easier for themselves is basically, sorry, I've lost this one. They're thinking of lower inputs. They're thinking of easier calving. Because they can't afford, because of less labour, to be calving cows. Agree? So a lot of them are starting to think more different breeding. So actually, as these numbers increase, you're tending to find some of them, as they get bigger and bigger, using less Charolais. Why is that? Perception. There is that part. There's the perception that they are hard to calve and it costs more labour. Agreed? So actually what we're seeing. So what you've actually also got to remember as well, so we'll set the picture there as well. The other thing to remember is, If you look at England and Scotland and England, look at 2018 to 2021, look at the top line. We have dropped our cows in Scotland 2.5% since 2018. In England, we've dropped them by 7%. But yet our beef calf registrations are going up. Why is that? Yeah. Where are they getting the beef registrations increase from? The dairy. The dairy's doing it, and as we were talking about earlier on, why is the dairy able to increase their beef registrations now? Because they're going down the line of sex semen. Half their cows are away, or not even half, to get sex semen, allows the other half to go on beef bulls. Are the Charolais scoring on that? No. But actually, if you think about it, if you look at the black line, it's the Angus that are scoring. The Angus that are going up in numbers. And then you look at the next line, British Blue are going up in numbers. Why are they scoring in the dairies?
These are calvings on dairy.
These are calving dairy, but what's the other thing that's more important for a dairy farmer? Gestation. They're wanting to get them quickly turned over. So all of a sudden the Angus are scoring into that market, the British Blues are scoring into that market as well. Okay? But who's not? So that's where they're seeing a big increase. But who's not seeing a big increase? Charolais going down, but who's the other big breed that's going down? The Limousins have taken a fair old hit. Overall, it's the Limousins that are going down in numbers. Where they're going down in the numbers is overall, it's cow numbers. Their Limousin cow numbers are going down because there is more thinking now, as we talk about in the next few slides, of more maternal type cows going on. Do you know what I'm talking about with maternal type cows? So I'm going to explain maternal type cows today in the UK. Give me some maternal type cows. Shorthorns. Salers. You're seeing shorthorns, Salers, Ling. You're starting to see our old traditional breeds like blue greys and that coming because they're more suited, more maternal types. Okay, so that's the big changes we're seeing at the moment. The Charolais are losing out. But actually, the interesting thing was when the first Charolais came into the UK, what was their main purpose?
The dairy.
The dairy. Yeah. But it's them, they're now the big push is towards that. So Charolais just finding there, we talked about, is increasing numbers. We're having a lot of herds, less herds, but more cows in these herds, and sex semen. So that's why you're losing a wee bit marketplace there in regard to that.
Just on that then, if we're going to do the thing. So how are you attacking the dairy sector in France with short gestation Charolais bulls?
We not manage really. It's more the AI companies who manage to sell something. They're working a lot for the Charolais breed. They're working a lot to find some easy coming bulls, mostly to get.
With success in the dairy industry? Moderate?
But it's a bit the same. We are not well positioned.
Yeah.
We have to work on it.
So what's the gestation difference between a British Blue and a Shark?
Charolais could be 5 days, could be 6 days.
But
Yeah, but often, but remember, half the job is your female as well. So there's a bit of a mixture there. But Angus are generally taken to be shorter gestation. On many commercial herds, when they go to put their bull, when they're rotating their bulls or whatever they're doing for the last time, they'll put as many Anguses out as they can because that narrows the calving period down. Brings them in shorter. Are you with me?
This is another strength of the Blue, is they have quite a fixed gestation. So we can see Charolais varying a little bit around an average date, whereas Blues, if they say they're calving on a date, my understanding is they pretty much calve on that date.
Well, absolutely. The thing about it is that we're not here, there's no press here, is there? Nobody recording. But what we've got to remember is the Angus have a market at the end of the day. The British Blues are very good to go on to these dairy types, shorter gestation, but they don't have the best markets and they don't have the best perception at the end of the day. Butchers find them hard to work with. Okay. Now, if you go and look up there, you'll notice this is what farmers do each year. They try and figure out if they're making money. So, net margins, that's after all the costs are taken away from them, all your overheads, all your tractors, machinery. And really, in 2020, we went making £31.10, before on average you're making £128 loss. We don't get any direct support now into the UK. The only difference that you get In Scotland, we actually get a calf payment. In Scotland, we get a calf payment. As long as it's 75% or more beef genetics, we get about £101 per calf. So that goes on to, in England, you get nothing, okay? Just right to reinforce that. You get absolutely nothing. It's only direct support. But really, when it comes down to it, do you see where we've got heavy costs in the UK? It's our sheds, it's our buildings, it's our machinery, it's our labour. And we'll never, and it's struggling to get away from that. And I'll show you how folk are looking to do that, get away from fixed costs. It's a big killer for us, agree? Many countries. So, we're actually, and folk are saying, so you are making a bit of money. Actually, we're not, because this tends to be the top third, the average of the top third, because it's only them that usually want to do their costings. You go into Mr. Average, he'll go, no, I'm not wanting my costings done. It tends to be the ones that are better wanting them done. So sometimes do we get a better understanding what's going on? No, we don't. Because beef farmers do not do their costings in any way compared to like dairy do as well. So we've still got a big gap. We don't know our cost reduction often. We don't know them at all. But you can see there where it's actually going. But numbers reared. Look at the QMS average. This is QMS goes to Scotland. We're still averaging about 85 to 89%. Remember, that's the top third of average. So what do you think in the UK we actually are on average rearing numbers?
75%.
It's about 82%. So 82% we're rearing. We'll go into that as well. So what you can see is that we have a situation in the UK that if we're not making a lot of money at the moment, what is it quite easy for us to do at the moment in the UK? Sell what?
Sell the cows.
Sell the cows. Because all of a sudden, gone are the days where we had certain illnesses, diseases in the UK where you only got £300 a cow. Now you're actually getting 1800, 1900 for cull cows. And so naturally, as our input costs are coming on us, herds are naturally reducing because they see the attraction. So you don't find, as we call it anymore, passengers. There's no passengers on farms because the cull cow trade is so strong. Why is it so strong? It's simply so strong because what does a cow give you at the end of the day?
Headache control.
It gives you your beef burgers, your stew, your mince, the cheap cuts, and with an ag inflation, inflation going about, what will the consumer want more of? The cheaper cuts. So that's why it helps. They don't want to kill too many prime cattle and sell half of it for the cheaper end, and then they're left with all your fillets, your sirloins, your top cuts. And that's what we have at the moment. So you can see that cull cows have increased about 520, yet finished cattle have only increased about 200 odd pounds. Right, so what I want to now is explain is how much money are we getting for every time we finish a beast and put it to the market. In Scotland, you'll get about 444, 447 pounds per kilo dead weight. Or pence per kilo dead weight. So we're roughly talking about sometimes 56, 58% kill out. Now in the Republic of Ireland, you're about 440 pence. In England and Wales, about 440, 445. Pence.
Yes.
Pence.
Which is pounds.
So, who, a month or two ago, who was well in front of us in price? You boys from Southern Ireland?
Yeah.
These boys were scoring big time. It's come down a little bit late, quite a wee bit lately, hasn't it? In fact, we've taken a fair old done. The Republic of Ireland, for every 10 kilos of beef that they produce, they have to export 9, of which the UK ate 5 of it. So obviously most of the processors in the UK are controlled by the Irish. I'll not go into that on a personal basis, but the Irish control it. But Ireland, actually, prices went up because Ireland moved their cattle not to the UK. Where's Ireland putting a lot of their cattle at the moment? They're very, very good at marketing Ireland. They've got big deals in Libya, Israel, the Middle East countries. All these countries are getting short. They're good at putting them over into Western Europe at the moment. Poland, Holland, Netherlands, sorry. Are really wanting these cattle and paying a lot of money for them. So actually, that's why the Irish were scoring big time before. There's less demand at the moment. So Ireland moves about. Now, Ireland moves about looking for good markets at the end of the day because they can't rely on the UK. Why can they not rely on the UK? Well, it used to be Boris that was in charge. It used to be, but well, it still is for a week.
Because we're inherently unreliable.
No, because he tried to do a trade deal with who? Because Boris had a trade deal with Australia and New Zealand, and it got everybody worried. And so the Irish who said, "Oh Christ, we've got a lot to lose here," they're looking for markets elsewhere in case the trade deal with Australia and New Zealand came apparent. But if you go and talk to the Australians and their marketing, they'll just say, "We're not bothered with you." We've got the Middle East here, we've got other countries to go and do. So that's what's actually happening at the moment. And in England and Wales, the price of cattle is about the same as Scotland. We used to have a 20 pence premium on Scotch beef. That no longer exists. It no longer exists because we don't have what we call an abundance of cattle anymore. Now think about that. When we have an abundance of cattle, when you have an abundance of cattle, you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Give me some of the marketing. Who differentiates themselves in the marketplace? Angus one. Who else? The short horns, the Morrison scheme. Organic, sustainable, grass-fed, anything. But their premiums are being eroded because we're short anyway, so they're not doing it. So remember there, that's where you score again. You start to score because they're losing out because they're losing their premium. If you think about it, the Angus, what's the Angus premium at the moment in the UK?
Nil.
It's about 10, in Scotland it's about 10p. What did it used to be? 20, 30p. What's the problem now with the Angus? Why are they losing so much of their premium? Too many of them. They'll get to that stage where they will lose the market because there's too many of them supplying the market. So you can see things starting to move together. Now, what's really, really hampering us in the UK, just like many other countries, is that prices are going up on raw materials, our input costs. We call them feed, fuel, fertiliser and electricity. I think we can summarise it that way. All agree? That's going on. So you're seeing these 80%, 60% diesel fuel going up, 50%, and fertiliser going up, tripling in times. That hits us. That hits us badly on doing it. So as our price of cattle is quite good, relatively quite good, we take 2 steps forward. But when we look at the input costs, we take 3 steps back. And that's where we're not moving on. And we go and say, well, that's fine. We could go to our packers, our processors, and say, we need more money in the marketplace. They turn round to the retailers, your Asda, Tesco, Waitrose, Morrison's, and say to them, you need to put the price of beef up. They'll say, ag inflation here is going to counter us to put the price of beef up. You with me? So it's actually caught between a rock and a hard stone at the moment. Right. When we talk about boys that are producing stored cattle, there's stores that are getting away to the finishers. Recent values, I've seen them get about another £150 in the marketplace, which is positive, but the cost increase has gone on £200, okay? So it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. One of the big finishers in the UK we were at a few weeks ago used to cost them £2.60 every day to feed any cattle he had on the farm to finish, okay? £2.60. It now costs them £4.10. And so they're all starting to open up now more and more, that the longer they keep cattle going, they get bigger and bigger, and so there's less performance out of them because there's more maintenance required of them, the less profitable it's going to be. So who kind of scores with less days? Right. So you start to score, you start to win there. So that's some of the common themes that you've got to remember. We have to have that quick turnover. I am not going on this thing about, oh well, we have to do a carbon work now, and who's more efficient? Is it those that just put them up in the top of the hills and just feed them on grass? Or is it those that can actually intensively feed them and put them away? There's a room for both of them. The Charolais are more suited for the grain and turn them over. And the other maternal, traditional breeds are more suited up for there. They have their marketplace, and the intensive Charolais have their marketplace. And it's not competition, they work together. That's what we've got to remember. We shouldn't be fighting one against the other. They both have their marketplace. That's what's important for us to actually remember. Okay, so how are these things changing? Larger herds, that's what we talked about. Looking for easy, sorry, my getting you go to talk. Easy managed systems, easy calving, less labour. We have less labour in the UK. Same as you, same as other countries, less labour. So that's one of the things that some of them moved away from the Charolais to get actually easier inputs. Lower inputs, low maintenance, and does this suit the Charolais? Not necessarily does it suit. All agree? That's what it's perception as well. Okay? Yet, the most important people at the end of the day to put meat to the processors is the finishers. But what did most finishers want? What breed? The Charolais. So they're saying we want the Charolais, but the producers are saying we're finding it hard to give you that because of it. Because every time, actually, they may sell them some cattle, they've got to remember the losses and infertility, the fertility issues they've had at home. But it's still, the finishers still want the Charolais. See when it gets to the back end of this year, what we talk about August, September, October, that's the time where a lot of the finishers come in looking for stored cattle to put in the sheds. They don't want to put slow rearing cattle into the sheds. They want what types? Charolais types as well. So see how it's what the finishers wanted at the moment. The store producer or the producer's finding it saying, oh, it's hard for me to keep going with these Charolais a little bit. Okay? So that's what we've got to keep thinking about. Right. So here's the ultimate system. Here's the ultimate system. Is that going one? Okay. So what you've got here now is what does the finishing cattle market want? Dead weight, okay? 400 kilos dead weight is what the processors are looking for, the packers. 400 kilos dead weight, which is equivalent about what, 720, 730 kilos live weight. So they're looking for that. That was a fair old change for the Charolais and a couple of other breeds to have. Suddenly they were given 7 or 8 weeks warning. We're actually going to start hitting you when you go over 400 kilos dead weight. So we have to make sure we've got market more suited to the medium-sized bulls based on more maternal type cows. We'll discuss that as we go. Age of slaughter, early finish, that's what we want. And it actually scores for you those that do your carbon audits because you're turning them over quicker. So we win there. Ideal in the marketplace, quicker on finishing ration and limited store periods, which are not stretching them out as much. Okay? That suits. But also fat cover. It's going to be costly now to put fat cover on a lot of our cattle. And the processors are now worried that a lot of cattle from now on, coming into the winter, will come into the abattoirs unfinished. Because it costs to put them from a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to 4L, and they're not prepared to do it. And that's what we've got to think. How do we get finish on them? Which we're going to go and talk about. How do we get the finish on them?
Sorry, beg your pardon, when it comes to fat cover, we have the Europeans have the Europe grid. A lot of these guys don't, so maybe just explain briefly what you mean by 3-4L.
Right, what we've actually got is you have what they call the European grid, okay? We're out of Europe, but we still have the European grid, which is E, U, R, O and P, which is based on your conformation, the best from E to what you go to P, is basically dairy types often. And then you have scores of 1 down to 5L, 5H, where it is basically the level of fat cover. So if you go and say to yourself, what's an ideal, what do they ideally look for? They probably look for an R3, R4L, isn't it? Usually into there. But you can score a bit more if you hit different categories, but usually it's different abattoirs will score you differently. It's based on your fat cover, okay? I do not agree with this. It's old. We should be looking at other things. We should be looking at yield from the carcasses, and we should be looking at meat eating quality and that side of things. How far behind are we from Australia? 20 years. Because they don't want to go down and address it. Our biggest problem is uniformity. In countries like USA and Australia, keep this right, when you put cattle into the processor and packers, you could be talking about 1,000 Hereford types or 1,000 Angus types. It's pretty uniform going in. In the UK, we have the most breeds for the number of cows anywhere in the world. And all of a sudden our processors will get 6 from you one day, 12 from you the next day, all of different breeds, different sizes, different types, and so there's no uniformity, and we wonder how the hell we'll ever standardise when we can't get that bit right. And that's a big difference that we have compared to, we're working with so many other breeds because we're always trying, in most of our herds in the UK, trying to provide replacements, which means a lot of our males are byproducts from them. You with me? We're too small, but now we're getting bigger and bigger herds. That will help for more uniformity. But the issue is here, who does provide uniformity? Beef from the dairy, because you're only working with Holsteins and Friesians, so they, and Angus over that, they are actually able to provide big numbers uniformly, and we're not. Okay? So we have got that to work on at these three aspects. And that's what it comes down to. What I'm going to try and talk to you about the second half here. This is the ultimate system in the UK. When we did a series of costings over about 2013, we did some work for a certain society, and they ended up having some of the best net margins, profits, we'd ever seen. Can anybody tell me what that type of cow is, breed of cow? It's a blue-grey. It's a new breed called the blue-grey. In fact, it's about 100 and something. It's our grandfather's days and all that, was the blue-grey. Can you tell me what the breed of calf is at foot? Charolais. That is the mother, that is the calf. They come up, now what happens with these blue-greys is, they reel them to there, wean them, and all these cows do is go back up on top of the hill. There's no input cost to them, the fertility is excellent, but these Charolais calves thrive. Now, remember we talked about 400 kilos dead weight, remember that? Big finishers in Aberdeenshire, and in Scotland it's called the Aberdeenshire boys, they're the big finishers we always say. They will say to me, Gavin, I will buy that beast from you, but I'll never get to the big weight that I want compared to the other Charolais in that pen. What's the answer nowadays? You don't want to. And that's what they're starting to score now, by looking at what breeds the Charolais goes over to make sure that they get the right breed, the right system at the right time with the right finish. You with me? So that's what you've got to remember, the way that we're actually going. Right, last slide before we start the second part. But really, so what we're going to have to work at to try and reduce our costs is better grass, clover, and limiting artificial fertiliser. One of the best things that ever happened to us when we're wanting folk to look at the grass more is the cost of fertiliser going right up. Because what does it force folk to do? Look at their grass, look at their slurry management, look at their soils. Agree? Look at their liming, look at that side of things. So we've got initiatives now in Scotland to support people to do soil testing. Look at the pH. We can encourage them to do it. And give folk also subsidies and grants for actual types of mechanisms, to actual capital grant schemes to allow us to have the right slurry applications. Outwintering of stock. When we talk about outwintering of stock, we talk about those that could put them on after arable fields, onto kale, brassicas, anything like that. But we also talk about those who can actually put them up onto hills. We call it deferred grazing. And actually, so we limit the amount of time cattle are in sheds. So we reduce that. You with me? Maternal cows benefit here, we'll go on to. Adapting the breeding to suit, you'll see that. Homegrown feed, and obviously everybody's still having to plan and budget for what they're doing. So that's the measures. Right, so what we talk about again is the role of the Charolais. Okay? So, when they talk about, have you ever heard about them talking about net zero carbon emissions? Does that not get thrown down your throat quite a lot? Who's all doing their agri-cap? Who's all doing this? Who's all doing that? And when it came down to some work that we did, what was the way that we could reduce our emissions by 30% on suckler herds? Basically, if everybody did this, we could work our way, I think we got to about 29.5% reduction. That everybody reduced their age of slaughter, did bull beef, improved the fertility, they calved it 2 years, reduced the cow size by 10%, methane inhibitors and grassland improvements. We could all get there, but we can't all do that, agreed? So we've got to work away what we can do. But tell me, what can the Charolais work at?
increasing their fat cover,
Mm-hmm.
reducing their weight at maturity.
Yeah. Age of slaughter, bull beef, and then we'll talk also about improving fertility as well. But we're not going to work on reducing the size of cows. It's not really for us on the commercial basis to do that. They are naturally doing that, again, by increasing the types of maternal cows they buy, or they take. You can see these things are always getting developed. And calving at 2 years, I think on average, I must be asked about 20 times a year to go and speak at meetings on calving at 2 years of age against 3 years of age. Most of our breeds should be able to calve at 2 years of age, but it doesn't suit everybody. The more you go up into upland and hill situations and the types of breeds they work with, it doesn't suit them to calve at 2. And quite often it doesn't suit them to split up their management, so it suits to go at 3. But we have issues that articles come out and they just say everybody should calve at 2, and it just doesn't work at all, and it can actually backfire. So actually calving at 2 that we found in certain farms has improved their carbon emissions. We found other farms where it's been a disaster. Because there's no point in calving them all at 2 if you lose half the calves. Okay? So that's the point. Just a wee soapbox bit.
First time I went to Australia, I was in David Bonfield's kitchen having a glass of wine and nearly got in a scrap with some bloke over calving at 2. And I can't remember his stockman's name at the time, it was Burley Ginstorf, and I was saying to him that he was saying, you're insane if you don't calve at 2, and I think Anna would probably agree with that. And I was saying pretty much what you're saying, you've got to know your market, and you've got to know what and I understand the desire to calve at 2, but it's hard to force people to do that because it doesn't work for everybody.
There's not a lot of breeds you can do it, there's a lot of circumstances. Quite often you'll go along to a farm and he's up in the upland area and you'll say, when you pre-calving at 2, can you look after them? No, I can't. Well, it suits you at 3. When they calve, can you separate them and feed them a bit better? No, I can't. Well, it suits you at 3. When they come in for the first winter after calving, can you separate them? No, I can't. So it still suits them at 3. It's a type of system that they've got very much, but the vast majority will be at 2. The ideal system is, to us in the world, is 2.5. We used to have spring calvings and autumn calvings and they would look after each other, but we've kind of gone away from that. So, when we go and look at the concept model, this is the work that we did in Scotland where we didn't bring the best guys in, we brought a whole area of Aberdeenshire together. And that's where we got our figures of 82% of the calves. And look at the fertility, we're still on average with 8 to 10% of our cows are not getting in calve. Okay? We still have fertility issues. Cow deaths, abortions, stillbirths. It doesn't take long to get to 82, agreed? It doesn't take long. The biggest problem with percentages is, in the UK we have herds of 10 cows. If he loses 2 calves, he's lost 20%. If you've 800 cows, it takes a lot more for you to lose that. So sometimes percentages can be actually backfiring. So what we've got to look at is very much this. This is a damn good calf, but there's an issue with it.
Won't grow.
Sorry?
It won't grow.
That's the issue. Why is it not going to grow? It's dead. But as the farmer said to me, it was a bloody good calf. But we still have that. We still have that. And I know the amount of discussions we used to have over the years with the Swedish that you couldn't understand we were losing it. You were saying the hard calving and stuff like that, which I've tried to work at and they have been working at it. But just don't blame it always on the genetics of that bull. There's a lot of your management that comes into it as well. And that's why some folks say to me, I bought a reasonably calved Charolais, reasonably good figures in Charolais. I brought it home and had problems because they kept their eye off the ball of what they were going to. Because they bought it because it was easy calving, no matter what it went to, it'd be easy calving. So this is a thing that we have to get away from at times, that the Charolais have moved away. You do not have the extreme bulls that you did have that was causing issues. And that's the kind of thing that a lot of commercial boys have got to realise now, that there are good calving bulls out there. But sometimes your mindset is, if I don't have a good Charolais, I'll go and buy a Simmental. If I don't have a good Simmental, I'll go and buy a Limousin. And how many times have you heard it, that the biggest differences are within the breeds rather than between the breeds? And that's crucial for us. But the Charolais must keep going down that line because it's a low input system now, they're wanting less labour and what they're doing. And it's not about changing breeds. When it went to 400 kilos dead weight, many of the Charolais boys, big boys, came to me and said, does that mean we're ruined? Do we have to move out of that breed? It's not. It's simply changing the management system of your breeding. Here's an example. If you have a finisher and he buys cattle in our spring, that's the spring, March and April, that they normally go and put them out to grass after that. That's how they used to do them. But when they're buying these cattle now, what do? They don't put them out to grass because they don't want them stretched out too long or they'll get over the 400 kilos dead weight. All they've done is change their management system. So they buy them in the spring, put them in the sheds and finish them off quicker and below the 400 kilos dead weight. You with me? That's all it came down to. It wasn't changing the breeds, it was just changing the management that we've got within our breeds at the moment. Okay? So, the slaughter industry commented, as you well know, that the Charolais cattle were becoming too lean and late maturing. Agree? They were becoming too lean. We weren't getting the finish on them. Right, heifers late to maturity. But it didn't help the case that when we were actually, when all these genetic evaluations were actually rewarding for leanness. But then they decided that a few meetings, Agnes started, and so did the other societies, well, we'll start rewarding for fat. So we changed overnight for allowing leanness, we actually were starting to allow for fatness. But we changed them overnight. So, could we change one day from leanness to one day fatness? It takes years to do that. And that's what the Charolais were saying. Well, how do we do it? Really, they are breeding away now, trying to put more cover, not having the big extreme sizes on them. But what they simply were looking to do was, right. But also the other thing was, what we didn't help was, as the genetic scientists, was we were rewarding as well for good growth. So no wonder we were rewarding at the end of the day those that were able to produce big cattle were getting a lot of money, because of genetic progress allowed us to keep going for weight gain, and we were able to keep going because there was a little fat on them. They were lean. You with me? So that's when it became a huge big shock to the industry and the breeds like the Charolais, that suddenly the industry was actually turning around and saying, they're too extreme for us now. You forced yourself out of the marketplace. We never really did enough work with the process as the end point of what they were really looking for.
When this problem came around, we've been talking about a meeting at Gretna House in Alistair Houston's office about 10, 12 years ago, something like that. We were identifying that the Charolais females were too hard. There wasn't enough softness, and we know the problems that bring. And we identified that the hardness slaughterhouses as well. All we did to nudge things back in the right direction was flip the way the EBB looks on the graph. And just that simple change in representation changed the direction through some nudge economics almost of how the Charolais are being bred. It's a tiny thing that worked really, really well.
Yeah, but it changed it overnight, but it was very hard for the farmer. The producer suddenly saying, oh well, I'll just produce fat. That's, as you said, it takes years and years to do it.
Well, this is just exactly, the change in direction takes a long time to get there.
We're still getting there, we're still getting there. And that's why you say, there's a speedboat there and a big cruise liner. Beef industry, breeding, are we a cruise liner or a speedboat? Cruise liner takes a long time for us to turn. A long time. What about a speedboat? Who's probably had more of a speedboat? Chickens, pigs. In fact, even sheep industry, because you can actually turn them over quite quick. But beef, it takes a long time, and that's what we're still fighting to get to this end point. So a lot of thinking had to change. So what did we need? We needed bulls that were more medium sized, easier calving, keeping the length. To really stimulate it and really go, when you go and put when you go with us in the Europe scales and put it to processors, packers as you call them, and we've got these good shaped cattle, big backsides, is that where the real money is? Where's the money? The loin, the length. But do you ever notice that when you go and see certain other breeds, when they've got tremendous back ends, they'll often be accused of being a rib short. And so all of a sudden, we're rewarding in our Europe grade for some of these back ends, but at the end of the day, the movement will be away for rewarding for length, loin, but also it will be yield. How much length, how much loin, how much sirloin. And that is to keep our length, or keep a bit of width along the top, because we're not scoring on the back end. That is not where the money is, but our European grade makes it that way. Okay? We've got a lot to learn, what we've got to do. Easy fleshed, We need easier flesh. Would you all agree? They won't do it. It's not what it was. Genetics, and what we need to do is provide the genetics that will lay down the fat cover, because we can't afford for the feedback to do it. That's crucial for us to look at very much in what we're doing.
So can I just interrupt you one more time and say,
No, I want it.
when it comes to the leg, does anyone anywhere have an EBV or an EPD or a method of measuring for increasing the length of the cow, measuring the length of the cow?
Your eyes.
No, yeah, so I'm talking about an EPD or an EBV, because yes, we absolutely need our eyes, but
Just balls, just at the station.
do they measure from the withers to the tail head?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have thought come away. You're talking about a reef short. That's all cutting from the sample or are they actually short of rib?
No, you just tell, I was just talking about what's in between. I call it a rib. It's another part, it's a rib shot. But what, yeah, don't go counting the ribs and say, hi, right enough, that's a rib shot. That's maybe one of the genetic defaults. But what we've got to look at is, as well, is we're scoring on the European grid at the moment. But what else have we introduced in some of our plants over the last number of years? ABP, VIA, where they actually look at the overall carcass, the video image analysis of it, and actually got a prodder in there for the fact. So it's actually looking to score, rather than it being told that you're an R3 today, you're an R4 tomorrow. It's done by a computer system that's all got algorithms in it, and you'll actually be scored based on the machine. But the machine is not there to do that job. Not there to do that job. The machine is there to, in the future, to score you on your yield, as we talked about. That's what it's there to do. And so you go and say, but you're very slow to introduce it. Yes, we're very slow to introduce it, because some people don't like it, and if they don't like it, they'll move to another abattoir, and when you're short of meat already, you don't want to lose business. You with me? But VIA will be the thing when it's going looking for yield, and that's the thing that's going to score for it, to get that overall yield. And all of a sudden to say, you've got a 400 kilo carcass, you have a 400 kilo carcass. Normally you'd get 1600, you would get 1600. This time you could get 2000 and you only get 1500. Why? Because of the length of the top cuts, how much more your top cuts they had. So that's where it all comes down to. That's the push that we're trying to make in the future. So, what we said is that we need, and this is where the Charolais have done a good job, they have made sure that now we want a type of cow that suits the environment. That's what you see more fertile and capable of producing a calf wanted in the marketplace. Okay? So these are the breeds that we've talked about. Angus, Ling, Shorthorn, Solers, Stabilisers, Herefords, Blue Grey, Semi-Cross, Semi-Lings, Welsh Blacks. More of them coming up all the time. Shorthorns are coming up as well. Lings have increased a lot. Solers have phenomenally increased. And they've increased in one of our areas in Scotland, Aberdeenshire. They've got thousands more Solers. Why do they like the Solers up in these areas, or right round Scotland? Murray will tell me anyway, but why do the Scottish start liking the Solers more?
Easy calving, easy management,
Yeah.
hardiness.
The Solers, good pelvis, so they can cope with the Charolais, but also, what does the calf that is born is a, what do they call it? Colour? The golden calf. And the amount of finishers that love the golden calf. And that's what you're seeing. But also Soler, when that progeny is born, they've kept down the size a little bit. It's got fat cover on it as well. It's fertile and it's milky. Okay, Solers are great on that. Solers, we're finding the two best at the moment on fertility at the moment. All our work is Solers and Stabilisers. Seem to be the two that are really scoring. So you can see how it's coming together. They're looking to do that. So there, type of cow, breed of cow there. It's just a Soler again. Charolais calf, foot, and the cows are wanted in the environment. They're only in sheds and buildings for about 2 months, 8 weeks per year. But still producing that calf that's wanted in the marketplace for the finishers. That's what it's coming down to. We don't have the same push anymore to provide that Charolais with the size that quite often went to continental type cow. You with me? That's not there. That's why certain continental ones are losing their marketplace. It's more of these types of breeds that are working for us. Here's a variety. You've got, well, there's a Charolais there, we've got Salers, you know. There. Anybody know what that breed is?
Hereford Angus cross?
Yes. What's it crossed with? Because we call it a certain name now.
No.
It's an Angus cross, a Hereford called a
Baldy.
Baldy, a black Baldy. That's where it comes, and they're getting very popular as well. And then you get other breeds there, crosses. But you can see, and when you go, and I'm sure you'll agree, when you do go to more and more Charolais farms, even when they've got own pedigree, you'll notice more maternal cows moving about. Agree? Yeah. So we're seeing that. That's what's happening. We want to be able to have the best breeding, the best genetics, actually the best cow for the marketplace, but actually in the future still provide that cow that's probably more suited for the environment, because there is this chase of us making sure we've got it right for the environment, because we've got our climate, our net zero, our whole thing that's going on, that we're able to do it. And when you think about it, how these types of cows can go into vegetation, poor vegetation, it's the only type of beast, the only type of breeding you can have, but it can actually turn poor vegetation into protein. That's what they fail to remember at times, what we're able to do in these areas. Okay? The other thing we've got is milk. When we did work years and years ago with Murray, years ago, we looked at actually pure Charolais crosses, Angus crosses, and semi-lings. When you looked at their weaning weight, that's when they were taken off their mother. About 8 months of age, 7 or 8 months of age. We didn't push them, there was no creep, no creep. The Charolais were weighing, pure Charolais, about 290 kilos. The semi-ling were weighing 340. What did the semi-ling have better than the Charolais at that point? Milk, absolutely. Because then, when you weaned them and then put them onto their own genetics, the Charolais started doing 2.15 kilos and the semi-lings were down at 1.67. What the way you score is the Charolais onto maternal cows to maximise your milk, and then when you leave them, when it leaves its mother, it works in its own genetics. That can't be beat. Okay? That's where it scores big time at the end of the day. So, put over the maternal cows will maximise the maternal, and then genetics approaching after weaning. And that's what I've said. If summarising, you're reducing what's wanted on the marketplace, plus you have cover for them at the day. So the future, well, genetics are crucial. Areas such as Cabernet, fat cover, and quick finishing, we still have to work at that. We still keep working away at it, and we're doing a good job. Compared to what it was, it's a lot further forward, and that's all credit to you. All credit to you and what you're doing. High input costs such as grain will have an effect on the Charolais. This is one of the negatives we've got, is the grain price. The Charolais rely on it. What you'll tend to find is that I quite often find, Charolais do well at grass, but only for a limited period. Their genetics don't often suit grass. It's like a high-yielding Holstein. How many high-yielding Holsteins do you see at grass? Not only if it break out, okay? Bull beef does have a future. This is what we've got to remember. That's what you can do as well, is the bull beef. Remember, we're getting criticised. Remember, we can't put bulls away below 12 months of age. If you do, they're classified as rosy beef, and you don't get as much money for them. And they want them up to 16 months of age. But after 16 months of age, you get criticised, you get penalised for having them. So we're able to do that, but we're actually finding that they're quick to turn over as well. And the retailers, when you actually talk to the retailers and processors, they don't mind bulls. They don't mind bulls, and they're very efficient. That's what scores. And you'll find that because they're getting less and less cattle, they're prepared to take more and more bulls. They're quick turnover, and that really what scores for you as well. Okay? Then,
What is bull beef?
will VIA dominate? And that's what we said. The type of breeds changing to where the top cuts are, such as loin. And so there's more emphasis and less in the back end. The current marketplace is the world is short of beef. We agree? Who wants beef? Who's the big country that wants beef all the time? China. Who's going to supply them?
No, that's right.
Do you know, most folks say Australia. You need to come to every meeting with me.
That's sort of not liking us right now.
Don't worry that as well. You know, you've got situations you all know. Look at Argentina. You see, Argentina's a big exporter. Is it an exporter? Not really. The country shuts its door pretty quick because of inflation and doesn't allow them. So the countries that'll probably be looking to be doing it is who? Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil. Yeah, look, America's doing well as well. But they're looking elsewhere because there's such a big demand from China and the Middle East and things like that. We don't have to be. We've got to worry. We've really got to worry that actually we've got to look at the world stage. We are guilty in the UK at the moment. This is me on my pedestal. That we keep talking about